Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Hello and welcome.
Welcome to the Disaster Zone. I'm your host, Mel.
And I'm Anita.
Anita, how did your week go this week?
Oh, it's been fine. I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. Just wake up, do the same thing, go to bed. Wake up, do the same thing, go to bed.
Also, as a widow, you're like, you wake up another day and you're like, oh yeah, I'm still a widow.
For sure. It definitely feels more like you're just going through the motions when I don't even feel like my life is a real life. I've explained that before. Like, this is like just a placeholder until things get normal, quote unquote normal again. And I'm just like biding my time until I have my real life back, even though I know that's not how it works.
And also in world news, there has been a lot of upset this week. So I'm pretty sure there's never going to be a normal ever again.
No.
So maybe we just ride this life out, have a good time, be nice to people, eat the tacos. And then we'll die at 107 years old because, you know, only the good die young. So we're still going to be here for a long time.
Probably. How has your week been?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fair.
My mom went on a vacation.
That's exciting.
So I think I just worked and I went skiing a couple times. And I know. I've been so frustrated with myself that I've been tired, right? And it's like, duh, there's grief. Hello, remember, it's exhausting. So this weekend, on purpose, I was like, Mel, let's really make an active effort to rest. So I did.
Oh, I've been really tired too. And I think it's just because it's the winter. Like, I know every year in February, I have to take like a nap every day because I cannot survive. It's like seasonal depression kind of a, situation.
Seasonal affective disorder. Or low vitamin D. Do you take vitamin D supplements, by the way?
Sure do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So guess what is amazing?
What?
Tomorrow is March 1st.
Holy cow. That's crazy.
Yeah. You know, it's way crazy. That means my dad's accident was 2 months ago tomorrow.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But that's also good because springtime is on the horizon, hopefully.
Yes. Ugh.
And you know what else is coming up? For us, we get to go to Florida to Tampa. And we can make it, Anita. We can make it.
Need to go there. I need to go to there.
Okay, Liz Lemon. So who's all coming to Camp Widow in Tampa? Please drop us a line. We want to see you there.
Yeah, if you want to join us, it's March 18th, 19th, and 20th, I believe, in Tampa. It's going to be amazing. It's so fun to be able to meet some of you guys, and it's also just great to be able to gather with people who get it and understand. And you can make jokes about dead people, and nobody will bat an eyelash. And they have it really smartly set up where they have some quiet places so that if it's a little too overwhelming for you, you can get away. They know what they're doing. Mel, guess what?
What?
We got an email saying they have the dogs coming again.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The therapy dogs in the lobby, the best.
Do you know what's making my heart say pity pat and be all happy?
What?
When I see pictures in the Widow Wives Club of our widow friends having in-person meetups, and we've seen a few more of those, especially as COVID is kind of easing some of the restrictions for that. It's so fun to see you guys getting together and getting to see each other in person. So if you guys are interested in meetups, go to our website. It's widowwedonow.com. And at the top right-hand corner, there is a link called Meetups. And you can look for an area near you. And if there's nobody there facilitating, then send us an email and you can be the facilitator. It's not that hard. You just have to say, we're going to meet here and eat tacos or whatever.
You can seriously go in the Widow Wives Club, make an event, and then it will be in everybody's notifications.
Yeah.
So it's super easy. Shout out to Maine, New Hampshire areas. Yes. And also to our friends in Oregon. We know that you have had some issues getting together, but shout out for your online Widow Wives hang.
Yeah, and I know there's some hangs in Texas that have been either planned or have happened. And we know our widows in California have been meeting up in the LA area. There's just lots of it's starting to get rolling a little bit more.
Yeah. Georgia? Y'all have had one, right? Anyway, you guys, check the meetups tab. And yeah, like Anita said, if you want to be a facilitator, please email us. If you have emailed us and I forgot to put you on the site as a facilitator, will you please email us so then I can remember to do that? I'm really sorry. My dad died and my brain sucks right now. Or if I put you up on accident and you want me to take you down, also.
I feel like that's worse. They're like, I didn't volunteer.
Sorry, Terrell. Anyway, we're all into community and there's a reason why. It's not just so that we can be cool and complain. It's because having community helps facilitate healing and connection in real life. So do it if you want. And don't if you don't. It's fine.
And come hang out in the Widow Wives Club also in our virtual safe space. It's on Facebook. It's a private club. Come join us in the Widow Wives Club on Facebook. It's a private group. Just make sure you answer all of the questions. We are closing in on 1,000 members.
That sucks and is awesome. You guys know what we're talking about.
Duality.
You know, I learn stuff in there every day, and I really love reading everybody's experiences and suggestions and seeing how people reach out to help others, or when people, it's their first time reaching out because they're tired of being too strong, in quotes, and they get help from those in the group. It's so heartwarming.
Yes.
So you guys, please come. We're in there every single day. Anita and I are. So we see you.
Probably too much.
Well, I mean, someone has to run it.
If you want to keep the podcast going, will you please check out our Patreon? It's patreon.com/WWDN. It's just a way for you guys to help support the costs of the podcast and the work that goes into making the podcast, because it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and we have 4 tiers starting at $5 per month and up. And I would like to say that at the widow, wife, and dead husband level, there are some cool behind-the-scenes things that we have up in there. And there's new content all the time and conversations and all sorts of things. So it's not just like, hey, sign up and give us some dollars and then peace out. Like, there are things that you can get.
One of the things you get at a certain tier and above is a shout out, and we're going to do that shout out now.
Okay.
We're going to start with our secret dead husband, and to her we say, "They call me Mellow Widow." Quite
oh my God.
right.
That's right.
I don't know why that song was in my head today, but it was.
Well, thank you to our secret dead husband. We are so grateful for you. And we are also grateful for the following: Constance Dahlbeck,
David Kelly,
Don Satterwhite,
Gail Paxton,
Ivan the Misner,
Kat,
Krista the Taco Wait,
Sam Finlayson,
Amy Hartman Martell,
Amy Neal,
Amy Sapp,
Ashley Han, Hoon
Ha, Brittany Pedro,
Chris Steffen,
Christina Shiflett,
Danielle Ketterberg,
Not a Debbie Downer,
Dennis Brotzo,
Heidi Hayward,
Jean Marie Massey. Well, hello there.
Welcome. Jenny Taylor,
Jennifer Beal,
Jennifer Brown,
Jennifer E. Hassel,
Jenny Wang,
Kathy Murray,
Kelly the Ford,
Kirsten Stromberg Clausen,
Laura Bradbury,
Lauren Old,
Leslie Webb,
Marie Hoffman,
M.K. Anderson,
Missy Schubert,
Rachel Barbosa,
woo woo, Sarah Morris,
Sue Golett,
hey,
welcome,
Sylvia the World Traveler Shore,
Taylor Snyder,
The Winehouse Karen Cornejo,
Vicky Spit, the widow of Kirchhoff,
Anna Tracy,
Christina Scambato,
Christine Anderson,
Cindy Raynaud,
Mindy Holmgren,
Dawn Barber,
Debbie Fells,
Deborah Westwood, not Eastwood like Clint,
oh interesting, Diana Becker,
Emily Toledo,
Eric Vandermeulen,
yeah! What's up, Eric? Welcome. Aaron Posick,
Gabe Lozano,
Gia Benoit,
Gina Haas,
Ian Sini,
Ilianabel Ruiz,
The Jackie.
the Jane, also the World Traveler,
Is she back?
yes,
Welcome back. Jenny Armstrong,
Jenny Barrow,
Jocelyn Milo,
Julie Stevenson,
Karina Jacobo,
Katie Radcliffe,
Kara Scara.
Chris Morgan, hi,
Welcome to the Patreon, Chris. Laura Keeley,
Lindsay Konopka,
Lori Farrington,
Marjorie Lewis,
Mary McGowan,
Megan Montague,
Melissa Bowers.
hello,
Welcome.
Melissa Hancock,
No, also welcome.
holy welcomes, my
Okay,
goodness.
wait. Two Melissas, welcome. We might have welcomed one of you twice. Sorry, you guys, you know how we are. Peter Rukavina,
Becky Saiba,
Sarah Kennedy,
Stacy Sayward,
Sunshine on my haven,
makes me happy,
and Disco,
Tammy Teravest,
Tara Wallace,
Valerian Root the Packer,
with all of the catons that are so beautiful.
and finally, we have Bamboo Shoot Wendy.
Just knot up your fingernails.
Ooh, thank you to everybody who supports us on the Patreon. We love you. Thank you for making it possible to keep the podcast going.
If you do not want to support us on Patreon, totally cool. If you would like to support the podcast but are not interested in Patreon, please consider buying us tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
If you're not in a position to do either one of those, then will you please just give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? Hopefully a nice one. If you want to say mean things, then just don't.
If it's a mean one, please. Like, we only have so much emotional capacity, but, you know. Or become active in the Widow Wives Club and say hi to us often because we love hearing from you.
Absolutely.
This interview is so much fun, Anita. This is our friend.
It's our bestie.
BFF.
Yes.
I feel like I love that we keep collecting besties.
I know.
Everyone is just so cool.
Don't tell the other bestie that we have so many besties. It's a little embarrassing. Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone, But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Okay. Well, I think they're going to know now.
Totally. We love all of you guys. You're all our besties.
This episode is our friend, also bestie, Tanya. And we know that you will enjoy listening to her, even though her story is sad. But it's very full of resilience and resolve and scandal and funny jokes.
I felt so many emotions when we were doing this interview because it took me back to a time that I remembered that had really visceral emotions. And it's kind of appropriate because we're almost, I don't want to say we're almost experiencing something like this again, but there are serious, heavy things that are happening in the world that are similar to what this story takes us back to, which is 9/11. So we hope that you guys will take care listening to this episode and that you will do what you need to do to make it a good experience, or at least a non-traumatic experience. Well, that sounded weird.
And we know that Tanya will be your BFF as well. I'm not Anita.
I'm not Mel.
But we are two widows.
And we're trying to figure out widow
we
do
now. This episode is sponsored by the Misner Family Foundation in memory of Elisabeth Misner.
Mel.
Yes, Anita?
We have our bestie here.
This is actually our bestie. We didn't know she was our bestie until a few months ago, and we are so stoked to talk to her. But why don't you tell us who it is, Anita?
Well, first of all, I just need you to know that she's our bestie, and we have talked to her for probably a total of 13 minutes in our entire lives. That's how quick we went from completely not knowing each other to besties.
And now in our phones, she's saved as BFF.
It's amazing.
It's official.
So this is Tanya Villanueva Tepper. Hello.
Hello. Yes, it was fast. It was a fast friendship.
A whirlwind romance, right?
Whirlwind.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like because we're widows, like we have to take advantage of the time. We know we don't have much time on the planet, so why not?
True. We're so aware. We are so aware. So you just asked me where I'm at.
Yeah, where are you?
I am in my jammy.
Wow.
We learned from Tanya just recently that if you're Cuban, you say wow, like this, wow. So now we're gonna use that.
Wow.
Wow. Okay, Tanya, you're in your jammies in your house.
Where in the world?
In South Miami.
Ooh.
Florida.
We met Tanya at Camp Widow, and Tanya's energy is not something that you can ignore. She is full of energy, and that's why we became BFFs immediately.
It was energy at first sight.
I love it so much. We don't even know that much about Tanya.
Yeah, I have some questions. Tanya, you are involved with Soaring Spirits, which puts on Camp Widow, correct?
Yes, I have been with Soaring Spirits since 2013.
Oh, wow.
Is that 8 years?
We can't do math. Don't ask us where.
Math, I believe it's 8 years. Yes.
Wow.
What do you do for Soaring Spirits?
So I'm on the advisory board, but how I came to Soaring Spirits was I was in a feature film documentary called Rebirth, which followed 9 of us after September 11th from 2002 till 2009.
Wow. Longitudinal study much?
Longitudinal study much, and it's the longest record of grief and trauma, of people coping with grief and trauma on film.
Wow.
And I was the only widow in this project. It was 9 of us who were affected by September 11th. I guess I should say that part first, right?
Oh, we're going to get there.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, but so 9/11 was my story. And so because I was a part of this documentary, which was released on the 10th anniversary of September 11th, it aired on Showtime. It had a limited theatrical release. I started to hear from widows that seeing my journey over such a long period of time was helpful to them. So the organization that produced the film, Project Rebirth, which I think has disbanded in the last couple of years, but they at the time were using the film to help veterans and first responders dealing with PTS. And then I said, well, maybe we can take this to the widowed community. And they said they would support me in that effort. And then I said, well, where do widows go now? And I did a little Google search and I found Soaring Spirits. At the time, it was Soaring Spirits Lost Foundation. So this was like in the early days too of Soaring Spirits. And when I was on their website, I saw that they had the Widow Village, which was, an online 24-hour forum for widows. And then they were talking about Camp Widow. And I was like, oh, it's Camp Widow. And then I did my little investigating and I saw that it was this weekend-long conference. And I said, oh, let me reach out to Michelle Neff Hernandez and see if she would be interested in me presenting a workshop. And mind you, I had never done anything of the sort, ever. I mean, I had a store called Inner Peace. There was never any public speaking or anything like that. But I don't know. This was what it propelled me into this life where then I showed up at Camp Widow. I presented a workshop called From Sorrow to Rebirth and Everything in Between. And I showed my 20-minute short film, which just highlights my story. And I gave a workshop on grief over the years. And I shared basically all the things that helped me in the aftermath. And I never stopped going back because I loved it so much.
Can you still find your film places? How do we get a hold of it?
Yes, you can. If you go to my website, TanyaVTepper.com, and you look on the menu for Rebirth Film, you can get the film on, I think, Amazon Prime, on iTunes, but there's a link that you can see it for free at the Georgetown University Digital Archive on my website.
So you started getting involved in Camp Widow as a speaker, and then you became part of their organization, correct?
Yeah, so pretty early on, because it was still such a small organization, Michelle asked me to be on the advisory board, and I was, yeah. And so my role really, I wound up designing their T-shirts and all of their, yeah, because she had like a limited amount of, of shirts to sell in the store. And I remembered there was, I just saw a font that I thought Long Live Love would work really nicely in. So I sent it to her and then she called me up and said, do you want to design some shirts? I'm like, sure. So now all of the logos and stuff that you see at Camp Widow and on the Soaring Spirits website, the majority of that is what I came up with.
That's awesome.
And I also do the tribute tiles. I lay out the tribute tiles that we put on the remembrance wall at camp, which is, I take it's such an honor for me to do that. I get to see kind of the love in the photographs,
Okay, Tanya.
It's time.
Can we back up 12 and a half steps?
Let's back up.
To actual Ground Zero Day.
Ground Zero Day, literally.
Like Ground Zero Day.
Like literally Ground Zero.
So let's back up even before that and tell us about your person and where you met him and like a little bit about your life before.
1994. I had just moved from Los Angeles. I grew up in Flushing, Queens, New York. I went away to college, hated the college, but wound up staying in Los Angeles. Loved it. Worked in a hotel, waited tables. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Didn't have to deal with cold winters. But there was this big quake, January 17th, 1994. But I lived about, I want to say like 30 miles from the epicenter. So I didn't really like suffer too much damage at all. I was living in an apartment with my boyfriend at the time, Philippe.
What? Wait.
Philippe, my French boyfriend.
My French boyfriend, Philippe, that I met at the hotel. We were living together, and the earthquake happened at 4:31 in the morning, and this chick from New York was not doing well at all. And with every aftershock, I was just a bundle of nerves, and it was hundreds of aftershocks. I'm like, we can't stay here. We got to go.
It's not safe. We must flee.
We must flee. So the day they reopened the 10 freeway, because part of it had collapsed, I drove cross country with our friend Luca, this Italian guy, because Philippe decided it was an ideal time to go back to France to go and spend time with his family since we were between jobs, and left me to do the move by myself. And so I went across country with our Italian friend, landed there, and then my friend Larry from New York, who was also friends with Sergio, that I had known when I lived in New York, they were visiting Miami. He called me up. I was like, oh, perfect. My other friend, Barry Lynn, was there. We'll meet up. Let's go out. And it was June 30th, 1994. And we went out and we got a little drunk. And one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I kissed Sergio. And it was like, it was just this crazy night. And then I was like, okay. So we wound up going back to the apartment. Barry hooked up with Larry. I was with Sergio. And it was a 5-day long one-night stand.
I'm trying to think of a great name for that, but I can't. So
This all makes sense that you have been in your own feature film. I just would like to point this out.
I know there's Sergio, there's Philippe, there was the Italian guy, there was Barry and Larry. I mean, keep going.
There was a lot of twists and turns. So now Sergio at the time was a New York City cop. He went back. Well, he was supposed to go back to New York, and it was like the moment he left, I got really sick, like fever, strep throat, like super sick. He was at the airport and he called me up. He's like, hey, I decided I'm going to stay a little more. I said, well, I'm really, really sick, but you can come. He goes, it's okay, I'll take care of you. And he came back to the apartment. And I mean, I spiked 105 fever. And he put me in like an ice bath. And he was just amazing. Like when I was shivering in the bed, he just covered me up and he was like, oh, it's okay, I'm taking care of you. And it was like, I'd already was very intrigued by him because he had talked about, like on our first night, about, we talked about everything and anything and everything, but he talked about Brian Weiss, MD. Do you know who this is?
Mm-mm.
Many lives, many masters. He is this the short story is he's a psychiatrist that did regression therapy for his patients. And his one patient, Catherine, who had like every freaking, anxiety under the sun, he wound up regressing her to a past life. So Serge and I discussed like past lives, all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, he's so spiritual. I love him. And then he took such great care of me when I was sick. So now I've fallen in love, but now he had to go back to New York, and then Philippe came back.
I was wondering what was going to happen with Philippe.
Boy.
I'm like, did you write him a letter? Dear Philippe.
Dear not John Philippe.
Dear not John, dear Jean.
Jean-Philippe. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Well, he came back and I had this commitment to live in Miami for the year because it was just like, I can't move anywhere because I don't want to go back to the winter, whatever. And Philippe came back, but I told him, I was like, look, I don't think we're going to work anymore, but we still live together. It was just like this crazy, bizarre thing. And then, so I would fly to New York, see Sergio, and I would write him every week just so he didn't forget about me, because I had to do it though from like I was a friend because I didn't want him to think I was like a fatal attraction. You know what I mean? So I played my cards really well, call here and there, even though I wanted to talk to him every minute of the day, and then like I came up to New York and then we went away for the weekend and then Philippe's parents came to visit and I said, why don't you take them to Puerto Rico?
Oh.
And he did. And then I told Sergio to come and stay with me. Terrible. I finally decided, that's how crazy it was, right? So I finally decided I needed to move back to New York because there's no way in hell this guy could think, who am I, right? If I wanted to pursue a relationship with him, there was no way I could do it from Miami living with my ex-boyfriend, right? So I rented a 17-foot U-Haul truck, 17-foot long U-Haul truck, and I caravan with a few other folks that I worked with that were moving back to up north. And I arrived in 1995, June, I think it was like May, June 1995. I got an apartment and he pretty much moved in right away. But he was saying to his friends, oh my God, I hope this chick doesn't think I have to hang out with us. But I was coy because I knew, I was like, nobody takes care of somebody like that when they're sick with dragon breath. You know what I'm saying? Unless they're connected. You know what I mean? So he moved in pretty quickly. And my biological mother, this is just, I'll say this quickly. My biological mother died by suicide when I was 6 months old. And when I hooked up with Sergio, I was in the process of this search for her family, for her. In my mind, I wanted to believe that she was still alive, but I was in the midst of this search. They were in Germany. And I showed, Sergio the letters. He's like, oh my God, you have to, definitely keep searching. So he encouraged me on that search. And in October 1995, he went with me to Germany to go and meet my biological mother's siblings for the first time, and he was there when they leveled the truth that she died by suicide, which I had suspected because of stories growing up, but nobody wanted to tell me the truth until that moment. And so, it was very intense. And it was that night that I learned that she died by suicide was the first time I told him I loved him. Because I was like, this has been like a life quest for me. I've always wanted to know about my mom. And now I found out and I conquered that fear and now I'm going to conquer this fear. I'm going to, and I traced it on his back. Do you know how much I love you? Right. And he did not respond. He did not respond until we got back to New York. And I had given him a card and I reaffirmed it, that, this trip was just, on so many levels, so meaningful to me. And the fact that he was with me and that I loved him. I wrote him this card. So he read the card and then he just looked at me, he's like, what am I going to do? I love you too. And he was afraid. Of course he was afraid. He met me when I was like, I had a boyfriend and I was like crazy, but yeah. So 95, we declared our love for each other. We were renting an apartment and then my dad died in 98. And that was kind of like my mortality call. It was like, I was waiting tables and I was like, all right, life is short. I've always wanted to open up a gift shop. And so I'm going to do it, you know? And with a credit card, I opened up our store called Inner Peace. And it was a neighborhood gift shop. And we sold, you know, candles and incense and, you know, books on spirituality. It was gifts for the heart and home. We had a little bridal section and picture frames and baby section. And it was just this really cute, you know, sanctuary in the middle of this bustling Queens neighborhood. And in 2000, we bought our first home together, which was a garden apartment, gorgeous, in the historic section, 3 blocks from the store. And that was 2000. He had just gotten called to the fire department because at the time when he took the civil service exams, he took it for police, he took it for fire. He got called for the police first. He was a cop for 7.5 years, loved it. He worked in the Bronx. He was a narcotics detective. And then he got the call to go to the fire department. And this was at the time when there was a lot of just, you know, the cops, it was kind of like now, like it was not a good time to be a cop. You know, everybody was against you. They had some really controversial cases at the time. And we had the store. And for him to be a firefighter, he would work 24-hour shifts and then he'd be off for 2 days. So it would give him time with me in the store. So he was a firefighter. He was stationed initially, he was assigned to Engine 4, which is in South Street Seaport, which would have been the second or third firehouse to respond to the World Trade Center, right?
Were you worried about his safety since he was in these positions at this time?
No, I wasn't. I was actually, when he became a firefighter, I was like, oh, well, you know, it is a bit safer. You don't have to deal with guns and drug dealers and, you know, and criminals, right? So I never had this fear of his safety, right? And then, for the year 2000, he spent that at Engine 4, South Street Seaport. And then I think in the beginning of 2001, at the time, they would rotate the new firefighters to different commands, to different firehouses so that they could learn, you know, different sides of the job. So he went from Engine 4 to Ladder 132 in Brooklyn. Ladder 132 in Brooklyn is like 20 minutes to the World Trade Center. So it was far enough, you know, so that the morning well, first let me say, we had everything in place, 2001. It was the 7-year anniversary of our first kiss, June 30th, 2001, when he proposed, when we got engaged, right? So that summer was wedding planning. We wanted to have, you know, a boy and girl set of twins because, you know, we were both 33 at the time, that we were going to conceive on the honeymoon. So, you know, we were on our way to officially start that chapter. We had the house, we had the business, he had his career going, everything was in place. We had the reception hall that we had chosen because we had, you know, done the rounds and we decided this was the place that we wanted to get married. It was the Fountainhead in New Rochelle. We had chosen our vows. We had an appointment for the Fountainhead on September 13th to give the deposit and book our wedding, which we planned for August 1st, 2002. So the morning of 9/11, first, the last day that I saw him was September 9th. He played soccer. He was on the FDNY soccer team. He scored the winning goal and he came back and he was really excited. You know, it was a big deal for him. And then that afternoon, we went to his best friend's house because it was the best friend's daughter's first birthday. So we were with like all of our friends and family for the whole day. And we got home at like 11 o'clock at night. The following morning, he left me September 10th to go to the Brooklyn Firehouse to do a 24-hour tour. So he was supposed to come home the morning of September 11th. I was sitting at home doing my nails, because I had to have my nails looking fabulous to show off my beautiful ring that he gave me. And the news broke. And this was when I had like a 13-inch little VCR, TV combo in my bedroom. And I was watching New York One News when they announced that the plane had, hit the first tower. And, it didn't really faze me. I thought it was like a little small plane. And then when the second plane hit, I saw it live. And it was just like, holy shit, we are under terrorist attack. Like, I was so disconnected in a way because it was so shocking. And it looked so small on my small television screen. Like, it was just kind of this very surreal thing just to watch it unfold. And I wasn't thinking that Sergio was going to be there because, he was supposed to be on his way home. At like 9, he should have been off, I think, or maybe 8. Might have been off at 8. Then when I saw the first tower collapse, I had that thought, Sergio was in there. And I was like, no, he's not. And then I just like let out this huge wail, this primal scream, because I knew that so many people had died in that moment, in that second. And then I don't know when it was that I started to call. I had called the firehouse and it was busy. I called his cell phone and just kept on going to voicemail. But then I was like, okay, he's there looking for his friends from Engine 4, because there's no way they would have been there for sure, and we were worried about Sergio's brother-in-law because he worked in Tower 7. And so there was a lot of like, just anxiety about where's Lewis but as the day wore on, the phone calls here, there, because everybody was just so shocked, and where's Sergio? Well, I'm sure he's down, there's a lot of chaos. He's probably down there looking for his friends at Engine 4. And then that late afternoon, evening, Mayor Giuliani, when he wasn't batshit crazy, came on the news, and he basically, said that there was definitely an enormous amount of lives lost, and particularly in the fire department, and for fire department families to call this number that they broadcast. So we start calling the number, and then they told us to go to the training facility, which was about 20 minutes further into Queens, away from Manhattan, to go and get more information. So I go there with Sergio's mom and sister. His brother-in-law had already made it back safely, thank God. And we were put in this room, and I remember seeing one woman. I'm like, oh, so who are you missing? Or, which firefighter are you? She goes, oh, my brother, he's from Engine 4. And then I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because I just knew that everyone from 4 and 15 couldn't have made it out. And then this other woman was standing there, and somebody went up to her and whispered in her ear, I guess that they had found her husband dead. And she fell to the ground, and and let out a wail, and somebody went to go and help her up. And she was like, get the fuck away from me, get the fuck away from me. And I just looked at Sergio's mom and sister, and I'm like, we gotta go, because we don't belong here, because Sergio's coming home. And so we went back home, and every 2 hours I was calling this hotline, and he had been, I had heard from the firehouse at one point, yes, they did go down, but they weren't quite sure at what time they arrived. There was still a lot of chaos. They didn't know if they had arrived before the towers collapsed. The communications were down. I'm getting chills just remembering this stuff. But at one point, the following day, this guy comes into my house, and he was dressed in a suit. And mind you, I had all of our friends. I mean, my house was filled. We must have had like 20 people in my house. My mom was with me because she worked in Jackson Heights. So she was staying with me because she lived in the city. And this guy rushes into my house. He's dressed in a suit. And I just remember, this is like a cop telling me, a detective telling me that, giving me news. So I was just like, hi, I'm Tanya, I'm Sergio's fiance. I went to shake his hand. And he's like, he's okay. I'm like, what do you mean he's okay? So it turns out this is a childhood friend of his that had connections in the mayor's office. And he had been calling this same hotline or whatever. And that he was off of the missing list. He was accounted for and okay. I said, he goes, go ahead, call, you can call. So I called, and the woman on the phone said, no, he's accounted for and okay. And I mean, I had all of our friends standing around me. I remember my dining room window was right here. And okay, wait, you mean to tell me he's coming? No one's coming to my house to tell me he's not alive. No, he's accounted for and okay. He's accounted for and okay. Now we were jumping up and down, celebrating. He's accounted for and okay. He's accounted for okay. Thank you, whatever. Just wait, okay, waiting for whatever news. My friends are telling me, you better go put some makeup on, because I hadn't slept, because we're going to go straight to the church. You guys are going to get married. And the celebration, and then we're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and hours. Nothing. Called the firehouse. They said that he was accounted for. Okay, no, we don't know anything. Later that night, the woman, I called and I checked. I said, I haven't heard anything. And she goes, well, let me check. And she goes, no, he's on the missing list. I said, what do you mean he's on the missing list? I called before. They said he was accounted for and okay. And she said, well, there was so much, confusion and chaos here. There was one point where we didn't print the last page of names. And maybe that's when, being Villanueva. So it went from this huge celebration to like, okay, well, he's still missing. Right. So then the next day I had all of our friends, I printed up missing posters because that was what everybody was doing. I made sure I got colored copies because that's how I roll. Right. And I put so much information on this missing poster. Like I put, he had a tattoo. He had a Yosemite Sam tattoo on his freaking pelvic bone. But I put his tax ID number because that was important. I don't know why I put his tax ID number, because I copied his FDNY ID. It was so weird. And we did this prayer circle, all of our friends, and I wasn't going to leave the house, right? Because I needed to be there in case anybody called. And we did this prayer, and I'm not a prayer. I'm not a person who prays. So it was like weird for me, this like surreal scene in my head where somebody's like takes up the reins to pray. And I send them off, and they put his poster everywhere. St. Vincent's Hospital, downtown, everywhere. His posters everywhere. And then I realized later that night or the following day, I put his tax ID number on that. You better go and get them back, So I held out hope for 28 days. Because I said, anybody coming to me and telling me that he's not alive before that point, you have to, because people have survived being trapped, after earthquakes and other disasters. So we have to give them at least 28 days. And very few people I could talk to, like, about how I was really feeling. It was like I was in this really weird kind of like a lighthearted, like hopeful, he's coming. I was doing like these daily emails because the phone calls, it was just too much, trying to answer questions. So I would just do email updates, and very few people that I could talk about how I was really feeling. And my friend Glenn, who was living in Toronto at the time, and we had worked together in Miami, it was day 26. And he told me, I've been going over my notes from Elaine, who's this astrologer / tarot card reader that he would get readings from. And he goes, she's pretty accurate. I was like, give me her number. Because I was at my wit's end, right? So I called Elaine, And, I didn't want to give her any indication of who I was. I just stayed very neutral. And, she's like, okay, what's your birthday? And I'm like, oh, she said, oh, you're 13-4. That's the number of karma. And right now you're being stripped of everything you know so that you can come into your own power. And I'm like, uh-huh.
Oh.
I do not accept your reading.
Yeah.
Denied.
And she's like, okay, I'm going to do the tarot cards, right? So I start to hear her shuffling the cards. And she goes, oh dear, you just lost someone. It's your soulmate. And it was in that moment that I finally just like surrendered. And I think I let out that another primal scream, and I just started sobbing. And she was like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to channel him for you. Right. So now channeling, I had already had an experience with, because after I got back from Germany, learning that my mother died by suicide, right? I was a little up, you know what I mean? Like, how do I process all of this? And the one person who I need to talk to about this is dead. So there's no letter. And same guy, Glenn, who was living in Miami still at the time, said, oh, we went to this medium named Susie, who she's really good. And so I flew to Miami, had this experience with the medium, which was unbelievable. It's a whole other podcast. And so I was very open to receiving messages and going to mediums. But I did not know that Elaine, and neither did Glenn, my friend who referred me to her, channeled. It was like, she never did it. She would just kind of keep it on the DL. But in this moment, she's like, okay, I'm going to channel him for you. And she brought me Sergio, without a doubt. In my heart, mind, body, soul, everything, I know I spoke to Sergio that day. She gave me names. She said he's telling me that Jimmy, Matthew, and Raymond are going to be helping you. And after 9/11, each firehouse assigned liaisons to the families to help, facilitate whatever. If we needed shelves put up or the car would be brought in for inspection, these were the guys that were going to take care of us. And Sergio's, one of his best friends, Jimmy, was a firefighter at a different firehouse, called 132 and said, I want to be the Villanueva's liaison. And then they also assigned Matthew and Raymond. And then she said, he's saying something, it sounds like Buddy, saying something. And I went, Bunny? And she said, yeah, Bunny. And I was like, and I started to cry because Sergio and I called each other Bunny. And right after, like that first week, I started getting crazy ass bunny signs, right? Which I wanted to believe were him sending me like little signs, just hang in there, I'm coming home soon kind of deal. But they were like uncanny signs, like crazy batshit signs, that it was undeniable, right? That it was him. So when she said that, I was like, so I started to that, and that was October 6th that I finally surrendered. And so then became the process of like, oh, how do we move forward now?
Did you know of any stories where somebody had been lost for that amount of time and then came back? Was this just hope that you were fabricating in your own mind, or were other firefighters or police officers coming home after that period of time? Because looking back on it, did you think like, why did I expect him to come home?
But just because there had been news reports of people trapped after earthquakes, right? Like, and the way the building, remember, I didn't go down to ground zero on purpose, I mean, Jimmy, his best friend, firefighter friend, he knew that night nobody was getting out. There was just, it was a complete fire pit of twisted rubble. But in my mind, I envisioned that it was caverns of, metal, and they were all like roasting. Like I had a Mad Max in my head, like they were roasting fucking hot dogs, and and like that they were just going to pull up that one beam and there was going to be thousands of people rescued, right? such wishful thinking, such wishful thinking. Because the last survivor they pulled out was that day, I think. It was or that night. It was the latter 6 guys. That was it.
What was it like to deal with your own grief as well as the grief of the city, the grief of everybody in the country and then the world? Like, that was a worldwide event, and you had this huge personal loss.
Well, I have to say, and this is also why I found my way to Soaring Spirits, because I was in the FDNY community and because so many of us had lost. I mean, there were 343 official firefighters. There were a few retired firefighters also that were lost. And the fire department set up a counseling unit right away. So there was community of others, So I went into therapy that October. Once I realized that he wasn't coming home, once I surrendered to that, I started therapy. And first, I was doing my one-on-one counseling, and then they did like a family support group, and they brought all the family members together. And there were hundreds of us, and it was widows, it was fiancés, it was siblings, it was parents, and they realized very quickly that they needed to divide us up by groups, by loss. So I sat in a widow's group, a married widow's group, and then they did a fiancé and significant others group. And so my week was, I would do 2 groups and one-on-one therapy every week. And I did that for about a year. And then I pulled out of the married widows and just stayed with my fiancés because they had different layers of grief. They had a lot of talk about kids, which was just really painful for me, but also it was information gathering. So, all of us had lost our loved ones, and almost 3,000 victims. There were, 20,000 remains, right? And firefighters, like, to have a firefighter service is a big deal. But you had 343 firefighters, right? So there were families who were having services right away, memorial services if they didn't have any remains in the early months. So I was practicing. I was going to, I don't know how, I went to dozens of services, whether it was a funeral or a memorial service, just to kind of take it in and see, what do we do? Because what's the protocols? There's firefighters lined up for blocks and flags and caissons, which is that ceremonial fire truck. And, and Sergio was a cop too. And I wanted to bring the cops in. And how do we, but the information gathering was, family would have a memorial service, and we talk about that. And then maybe 2 meetings afterwards, they would get the call that they found their loved ones. They identified some remains. So then they would have to have a funeral. So it was just like a regurgitation of memorial, funeral, ceremony. It was so much. And then when I started to see that was happening, I was like, we're not planning a service until, we know for sure that he is identified. Because then it became a point where they were getting, like, they've identified, one woman talked about how they identified her husband's, like, a piece of his foot or something. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want call after call after call, So I spoke with his mom, who she left everything up to me. And I was very fortunate because a lot of the fiancé, significant others, they didn't have that. And with his sister, we made the decision to let the medical examiner know that once they closed down ground zero, we didn't want to be notified. This is how we did not want to be notified if Sergio were identified unless 50% or more of him was identified either through dental records or bunker gear. Like, I didn't want the finger. I didn't want the toe. I wanted just like maybe this part. It was so morbid and awful, you know? And then we said, okay, by the time they closed down the site, then that means that anything that they have is going to be too small to identify. So that's when we'll have his service. So we didn't have his service until June 7th, 2002.
And there were no remains found. Is that correct?
Never remains found. And so we left that directive with the medical examiner. We don't want to be notified once the site is closed down. And don't you know, in 2013, I got a nice little letter that said, we have just identified a new firefighter. We understand that a lot of families might have changed their mind. Please let us know if you want to be notified now. And of course, me and his mom are like, no, we don't want to know. But now his brother and sister want to know. So now we're like, oh, well, if they want to know, we have to know. So now we could get a call anytime. And just 2 days before the 20th anniversary, they identified, I know they identified at least one person 2 days before the 20th anniversary. So it's crazy.
Was it really, or is it really hard for you to not have answers, to not know exactly what happened? Has that softened over time? Was that really difficult in the beginning? Is it still difficult?
You know what? It's not, because I had that reading. I had those readings actually with Sergio, and I'm not attached at all to that physical, you know, like, no, it was, you know, I know that he went that day, you know, and that one of the things that she said was that God gave him the gift of dying a hero, which was like, was a big deal, you know, for him too, because that even that summer, that Father's Day, they had lost, I want to say 6 firefighters in a Father's Day fire, right? That summer. And it was the largest loss I think the FDNY had had in years, you know, if not in its whole history. And then you had, you know, 9/11 happen. After those deaths happened on Father's Day, Sergio had gone to a lot of the funerals. I had asked him, isn't it sad? And are you okay? Are you sad? He goes, no, it's not. He said, there's so much honor, you know, in the way they send these guys off. So that gave me a lot of peace, even knowing that I don't have his body, you know.
But you lost your bed partner, your future, all of those future things. So how did that color things for you as the widow instead of a coworker?
Oh my God, it was everything. It was like my whole life went down with those towers. And I couldn't work in the store again. I just couldn't, because everyone in the neighborhood that lived in the neighborhood knew us, that worked in the neighborhood knew us. And I mean, when if I were to show you like the way the store looked after 9/11, you know, we had a gate down and there were flowers. It was like a living memorial. You know, it was a memorial. Flowers in the gate, candles on the sidewalk. You know, everyone knew that the owner of the store was a firefighter who was lost on 9/11. And so I felt like, oh my God, everyone knows I'm the widow. So I just couldn't go to the store. It was too painful. And when I went out, I would just like put the hat on and I would just kind of, you know, lower my head. It was weird because there was that in the neighborhood. And then on the flip side, I was like, well, Sergio can't be forgotten. People have to know the personal stories. He cannot get lost in a blur of names. It's not a blur of names. These are people, and I have to share his story. So while I was hiding in my neighborhood, I was also doing interviews, and you know, it was like this crazy opposing life. You know, it was just so weird. But because of that commitment to, like, you know, I would put posters up, you know, for the anniversary. I think I even did it for the 6 months first. Like I made this beautiful poster up of collage of pictures and I wrote, "Dear Humanity," and I was like, let us remember, to just, I don't know what I wrote. It's just like profound shit about when you lose somebody you love, you are all of a sudden all wise and you better like appreciate this life, right? It was that. So I would put these posters up everywhere. Like I put it down by Ground Zero where it was still a construction site, or actually, for a while it wasn't even a construction site. It was just a pit. Or, on the street side. I mean, it was crazy. But then I was approached by the director of Rebirth, the film, and he said it's going to be a 10-year commitment, right? And I was like, I'm in, because I wanted to share Sergio's story. And I was also I also wanted to see, I wanted a record of my grief too, in a way, So every year we sat down for an interview. And I just was so curious of how my life was going to turn out,
Did you feel at that time any hope for your life? Did you feel like you would live again? Or did you feel completely buried at that point in time?
No, it was funny. I felt like, and it did help for me also, again, to have that spiritual piece to it, because Elaine wound up being a really wonderful spiritual counselor for me. And she kind of did my chart, and she showed me like all of the ways that this really profound loss was going to shape my life, moving forward. And she saw that I was going to, at some point, get married and have another love, So I was hopeful. Not to say that there weren't days where I was like, shit, I had to wake up again. Or when the guy, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this is terrible. There was a sniper in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that story of the sniper in DC that was just randomly shooting people at gas stations? And we would talk about it in group. Oh my God, I need to get a t-shirt with the target because I don't want to live anymore. I definitely was there where I didn't want to live also, but there was always still just like that little sliver of hope that still kept me going.
I have a question for you about when Elaine was telling you that you would get married and have a life and another love. How did you reconcile that? Because I know for a lot of widows, that's the last thing that they want to hear, depending on how close that is to the day that their person has died.
Well, I reconciled it by seeing other widows ahead of me. I think that there's so much hope in just seeing that, okay, she went through this. Like my aunt was in her, I want to say she was in her late 30s, early 40s when she lost her husband. She had 3 children, and she wound up getting married again. So I saw that people had survived it and that they were able to kind of carve out new lives for themselves. I didn't know how it was going to look for me, but I wasn't ruling it out. At first, though, I will say that it used to piss me off when people would say, "You're so young, you'll find another love." And it's like, I don't want another love. I want Sergio, And for the longest time, I was looking for another Sergio. I wanted another Sergio, And then life just, unfolded and I became a biker chick. I don't know if you know that part, but I did become a biker chick. And it was like those first couple of months, it was shortly after that, shortly after his memorial service was my first birthday without him, June. And it was kind of like, what am I going to do? He's not here, And my friend called me up, my friend Jenny, and she's like, guess what I did? I just got my motorcycle permit. I'm going to get my license. And I was like, oh, okay. I think I'll get my permit too. Just kind of like, okay. And when I made that decision, I kid you not, in the file cabinet, because I was on the phone and we had like a little corner closet, which we made into an office. And in the file cabinet, I just was, rummaging through the papers, and there was a driver's manual for motorcycles because Sergio had wanted to get his motorcycle license. So I felt that was like validation. And then I went to, I took classes in New York. And then October 2002, Jenny and I bought a condo down here in Florida. And that's where it all began. I would just get away from New York, get away from all the reminders, get away from having to freaking put my, hat and head down, hat on, head down, and, shed the widow coat and just feel free. And I bought my motorcycle in January 2003. I had this little Honda Shadow and I felt so badass, I was like so badass. And there were times too when I would be like, it wouldn't be so bad if somebody hit me right now. Or if I just kept going straight to that canal, But on the flip side, it was very freeing. It was just like, I felt the wind in my hair and the sun on my face, and I didn't wear a helmet. So I wasn't afraid if somebody was gonna, and for any motorcycle widows, I honor you. This is my experience it was very freeing for me. I had jumped out of a plane. That was another thing. Cause I had like this crazy, it was like a death wish to live, like I wanted to do risky things to feel like I was alive, but I wouldn't be bothered if I died doing it. You know what I mean? So, but the motorcycle was a huge tool. And then in May 2003, I drove into a gas station about a half an hour from South Beach. And I met my husband.
What?
Always at the gas station. That's where people meet each other. That's normal.
Did you get nachos together?
We didn't get nachos, but you want it. This is the beauty of this moment. I had my best friend, Debbie Dog, on the back of my bike. And we had another friend, Carl, with us. We roll into the gas station and Ray, my husband, is there with 5 of his friends. And they are like, rough, rugged looking biker dudes. And this was like the first time I had really ventured off of South Beach, and they were in this gas station because they had just gotten pulled over for loud pipes, right? And as I'm pulling in, I'm like, oh shit, biker gang, don't look at them. Don't drop the bike. Just play it cool. Just be cool, right? Just fill up your tank and go. Don't engage. This is me in my head. And Debbie Dog goes, she sees them looking at us. 2 chicks on a bike. It's hot, right? And I was mortified. I was like, that's supposed to be inside voice. You shouldn't have said that. But it opens up a conversation, right? And when I tell you 5 minutes in, I'm standing next to Ray and I'm like, yes, I'm going to get my tank painted in honor of my fiance, who was a firefighter killed on September 11th. That I basically vomited on him, let him take it, because I also needed to put the wall up. And then he pointed to his license plate and he had a little firefighter angel emblem on it.
What?
Yes. Because he used to be a firefighter when he was in his 20s. Now he's a general contractor. Now he's a builder. So that kind of opened up the conversation. And then we went riding that afternoon. And he lived in Miami, so he rode back with us. And on the way back, we all agreed, me, Debbie, Carl, and Ray, to go and have lunch on South Beach. By the time we get to South Beach, Debbie and Carl bail and leave me with Ray by myself. And what do? I talked about Sergio the whole time. I cried. I cried. He was so good. He was like, I could see you really loved him. I'm like, yes, I do. And we became really good friends. And then I even tried to hook him up with Jenny, the one that I bought the condo with. And the night I introduced them, she got hit by a car.
What?
I swear to God, she got hit by a car. She didn't get hurt, thankfully, even though she flew in the air about 20, 30 feet and landed on the ground with a tank top on, no road rash. She got up, she bounced off the hood of this car, and she got up, and it was just this crazy thing. She got up, she yelled at the poor 20-year-old girl driving the car that crashed into her, "You just ran me over." And, she was okay. We had the paramedics come check her out. She was completely fine, except for this tiny bruise on her hip. But because she got hit by the car, that put the kibosh on her and Ray connecting. And then 2 weeks later, I was in Los Angeles visiting my friends, and I had a dream about Ray, and I was like, "Oh, isn't this interesting?" And so I came back to Miami and I put my moves on him, I did my little dance of seduction.
And this time you didn't have Philippe in the way.
Yeah, Philippe was long gone.
Oh my goodness. So Tanya, I love the idea of life unfolding, because the idea of life unfolding has this air about it that you're not forcing it, but you're also not doing nothing and just waiting. Like, you're turning the pages. So you're doing something that's intentional, but you're not really knowing what's going to be on the page that comes. And I think that that's so powerful, to have this idea of kind of being there for the ride, but also being a part of your own story. But just the idea that we aren't forcing things to happen, but we're also not, we are a part of our own story at the same time. And I think that's a beautiful way to kind of think about your life after you've had this huge loss.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely an unfolding, and you do have to take an active role in trying to grab whatever feels good to you. And good is peace, good is, comfort, good is joy, good is laughter. Good sometimes is also just to have a pity party, but like knowing that you're the person that's in control of that, and then just allowing for the unfolding, everything reveals itself. And there's so many surprises that you would never imagine. I never would have imagined that I would meet Ray, my husband, in a gas station, and that he would be wearing cowboy boots. You know what I mean? Because Sergio, like, for a while I was chasing Sergio. I wanted like another Argentinian, like Latin lover type, you know what I mean? And then I got my country singing, country music loving, cowboy boot wearing, redneck husband, Ray, who I absolutely adore. And he's absolutely the other soulmate in my life, And we've been married now 15 years.
And it shows us that we just don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what lies ahead. And I think it's so beautiful that you share your story, also knowing the power of people who are further ahead of you in the journey, because you know that this is going to touch people that are at that point of, I hope that when I'm riding my motorcycle or when I am going to sleep that I don't wake up again or I get hit. People are passively suicidal, and it's totally normal, like you mentioned. So I love that you are still sharing your story, and I hope that you continue to do so, because you are such a light in the world as well as the widow community. What advice would you offer to somebody who is maybe in their first year or two?
I think the best advice is really every day, just do something good for yourself. Something that either brings you comfort, peace, joy, laughter, feeling loved. Self-care is huge. Thank God Jenny was a massage therapist. So I used to get hooked up, when I worked in the store, I rarely made time to go and get my nails done. I would have to do it myself because I was always working. In that aftermath, I was getting my nails, I was pampering myself. So I think making a commitment to doing something kind for yourself every day, even if that thing that's kind is leaning into your pain and having a pity party. Support is huge, especially peer support. Huge. I wouldn't have gotten through this with as much, I don't want to say the word ease, but I will say ease. It was much easier to do it with my girls by my side, you know? And looking at widows ahead of you for that, just kind of that hope is huge too. So my advice, 3 things: something kind for yourself every day. Definitely peer support is huge. And looking at other widows ahead of you and how they're thriving in their new normal.
Those were all 3 really great things. You must be practiced at this kind of business.
A little bit.
She has a PhD in widowhood.
Tanya, we have a very important question to finish up with. And it's more important than everything else you've told us so far. Mel, do it.
Dear BFF Tanya Villanueva Tepper, what is your favorite cheese?
Oh my gosh.
I know,
High
right?
stakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I really love? I love the Parmesan crisps that they like. It's fried. It's just like a fried cheese, like a chip that you could throw on a salad. I can get down on that.
Those are so yummy.
That is the first time we have heard that specific favorite cheese. I love it.
Yes. And my daughter, she calls this one cheese, and it made me laugh, camembert.
Oh,
I do like a camembert cheese as well.
I love a good camembert. Oh, Tanya, thank you so much for talking to us and telling us your story. I was getting chills while you were telling the story too, just imagining the chaos and just how awful and traumatic it was, because you didn't have any camembert anyway.
Because I had no camembert.
Yes, how just and drawn out that would be, and how painful, and also it was probably a really galvanizing experience for your group of friends too, just to be that close and to be all in on that experience. Wow.
I felt feelings too, and I am a cold dead heart. So yeah.
Well, then mission accomplished.
You did it, man.
If I could give you feelings, Mel, I mean, mission accomplished.
I don't know if it's like, I mean, because I was in it was my second year of college at the time, and I remember the feelings just from college, trying to figure out what was happening, and then, you know, just the news, and it's so far away from New York, and even still, like when the anniversary things come up on the news and I watch it, like I'll get a lot of those feelings back, and, you know, kind of the heart reaching across the country to the people of those who they lost. And so to now hear you talk about it, it brings it even more real. And so I don't know if it's extra because we experienced it but far away, and now we were living through it with you again as you were retelling it. But man, your story is so amazing and hard and beautiful, and you're the best, and we really appreciate you sharing this with us, because that could be hard. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I wish you girls like every happiness and joy and success, and you're my besties, and I love you.
Thank you so much. We hope everybody has enjoyed listening to our bestie, Tanya, and have really felt some feelings while listening to her story. Remember to check out the Widow Wives Club on Facebook. It's a private Facebook group. You need to answer all the questions or we're not letting you in. And if you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/widow-we-do-now.
And if you don't want to do any of those things, just give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Please, it helps me to be able to deal with Anita because she's competitive.
Until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Tanya.
We're 2 young widows and 1 widow who will publish your tax ID number if you don't come home on time. And we're all just trying to figure out
Widow we do now. This is my favorite thing.
to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.